So I decided to make another video about Pokemon because apparently the first one did not register as I expected it to. I mean, I expected it to make the Pokemon fans rage, but they did not rage in the sense of I was talking about their favorite game. They raged in the fact that I didn't bring up anything that they didn't expect me to. So, basically you're telling me that all these grotesque problems that make the game visibly bad, you're just upset that it's all too common, that you've been there, done that, rather than, pointing out that this is a bad game. I mean, think about it. Let's say you never heard of Pokemon before, and I was to pitch this idea that this is going to be a children's game about capturing a bunch of cool, colorful monsters. Only, you can only catch about 10 to 20 of them, and then the rest of them are either bosses that you'll only maybe see once, or super rare promotional ones at special events and things, or you'll need a game genie, or, some other bullshit. And every generation, there will be a new set of 100 or so monsters, and you will never see the old ones again, and you will always see the same 5 per level, and again, you will only capture about 10 or 20 of them, and things like that. That wouldn't make a very good sales pitch, would it? If I were to go up to a game developing company with that, they would probably call me stupid, insane, and you're fired. But then again, this is the game industry we're talking about, so if they propagate it right, market it correctly, they can get away with anything. And they do get away with anything. So, yes, that is a big problem with Pokemon, and that should be pointed out. And one of the people that was these types that was not offended by the fact that I said something bad about Pokemon, it was more so just it was all too common, was Kitty Wonder, and she has cerebral palsy, so that explains it. People with mental disorders like Pokemon. The issues I do want to bring up that were not commonly associated with Pokemon rants were that every single game becomes a downgrade to the last one. And I don't mean simply that the Pokemon become more unoriginal or anything like that. What I mean is, technologically, the game reduces and becomes worse every single generation. I remember Pokemon Gold. And in Pokemon Gold, your Pokegear had the cell phone and everything like that. And then, in 3rd generation, you cannot delete phone numbers from your phone. That's a downgrade from when I could delete phone numbers from my phone in the previous generation and do it relatively easily. That way I could only call back whoever I wanted to call back for a new battle versus actually having to, just manually scroll down, and the phone system was complete shit and everything like that. And of course, why is it in between Generation 2 and Generation 3? They didn't think, hey, maybe we should have them consent to having people's phone numbers in their phones. Is this fucking Facebook, where anyone can just add you willy-nilly and there is no participation on your end involved at all? That seems to happen a lot in Japan. Maybe that's why there's so many rape cases in Japan. You don't consent to getting people's phone numbers. You don't consent to Pokemon battles. You don't seem to consent to much of anything. Why even play Pokemon? All it is one railroaded shit after another. The moment you press start, it basically plays the game for you. It tells you how the battle plans out. It tells you who battles you. It tells you who's in your phone database. It tells you fucking everything. How is that any way to play? How is that functional? How do you get that past betahood when, it boggles my mind. How do you manage to make that game and make it work and make it successful? It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense how you could not see these blatant problems that could, be detrimental to your fan base and hurt your sales. I'm telling you right now, why the fuck are you playing a game where you can't even decide who the fuck you fight and win? I mean, really, it's like, it's supposed to be a JRPG. RPGs imply some semblance of role-playing. I don't expect a riveting storyline, but I do expect some sort of choice in the matter. And I've never seen a JRPG give you that, especially Pokemon. Pokemon is like all the bad things of JRPGs rolled into one. It's like fucking Final Fantasy. Anyone who likes Final Fantasy does not know a damn thing about gaming, and it's just one of these weeboo pretend hipster gamers. And they're the worst kind. They're worse gamers than the so-called girl gamers with a U. They're worse than the gamers that simply play Call of Duty and Halo and shit like that. They're worse than all those guys combined. Because the weeboos degenerate gaming. They deteriorate gaming with the shitty crap that they're just devoted to. And it's completely irrelevant. It's completely worthless. These games have no significant value whatsoever. They have nothing to offer as far as artistic expression. They have nothing to offer in innovating the gaming institution as a whole, and they get worse every single time. So, you know, with every new generation, it gets a little bit worse, and you have nothing to look back on. Back in the older generations of Pokemon, you at least had something. Another reason, HM slaves. There was this coin term that you picked a Pokemon to be your HM slave because, you know, you had to have all these fucking HMs, which they never got rid of them. At some point, didn't you think that maybe it would have been easier to just combine the HMs, or maybe have certain Pokemon attacks replace HMs, things like that? No, of course not. They just keep having the HMs. Sometimes some games have more HM requirements, such as Dive Pool or Whirlpool or whatever the fuck it's called, and things like that. Sometimes like 7 some HMs you need. And I know at different points in the game you're going to need them, but come on now. That means you always have to have one Pokemon in reserve for your HM slave. And that gets more and more difficult with each generation. Because in Generation 1, pretty much any Pokemon could have been an HM slave. But by Generation 3, all of a sudden, nobody could be an HM slave. I remember when I played Emerald, and the first thing I was thinking about was, okay, which one of you little bastards can learn Flash? I got out 6 different type of Pokemon. None of them were capable of using Flash. Not the normal type, not the electric type, not the Zubat, nobody. Nobody could fucking use Flash. The only time I was able to use Flash was with Abra, and this was a hacked version, and normally I would not have Abra. So, why in the fuck would you have Abra be the one of all the Pokemon to be able to use Flash, when most likely they're not going to have that? So unless you play a hacked version, you will always be one step behind. It will always be cement blocks tied around you, trying to get around these stupid, annoying, speed bumps. It's not a challenge. It's just frustrating. It's incredibly annoying, and there's no point to it. There is no point to having to go all around trying to figure out who the fuck can use what HM and things like that, when it could just so easily be solved. And nobody wants to see those incredible flaws. And nobody ever fixes them either. I see hack after hack after hack, and nobody ever thinks about any of this shit. Nobody ever thinks, hey, maybe a game about catching monsters should involve catching monsters. Maybe there should be less level grinding. Maybe there should be less HM dependency. Another thing different from Generation 1 from onward. Teleport. That thing Abra does. One of the best reasons to have Abra is because he's a free escape rope. Whenever you're in a mountain or some bullshit, and you're always coming across Clefairy or whatever your equivalent is, you always can depend on Abra to be your escape rope for you. Escape rope is awfully expensive, and that's what he's there for. Usually you want to just see things through and get to the other half of the mountain or whatever, but if you're just sick of the bullshit and your Pokemon are weak, you use Abra's Teleport. Now all of a sudden, Teleport doesn't do jack shit. I'm sure in some rare circumstances it does, but apparently they didn't think that was, bad enough. They wanted to make Abra worse and essentially nerf the Teleport, even though all it did was serve as an escape rope. No, can't even do that. Now you have to walk that shit out. You have to have repels all plastered over you. You better have some damn plans ahead of you like fucking Batman if you're gonna go to the Clefairy Mountain and deal with that bullshit. Why? How is it you managed to make things worse from Generation 1? And it just keeps going on and on like that. Just countless times. It's like they intentionally made it more frustrating, made it more aggravating, made it more tedious, and like a chore, rather than a game. And I seem to be the only one that sees that. I seem to be the only one that gets that, you know, a game is intended to be fun, not obsessive compulsive. It is not meant to be neurotic, where I just press the button over and over and over again, and I use the same attacks over and over and over again, and see the same fucking Pokemon over and over and over again. That's autistic. Why in the fuck are you still allowing this? Why in the fuck are you still participating and supporting this? Pokemon needs a complete rehaul. You have 800 goddamn Pokemon, and you're only seeing 10 of them at any particular time. And then they think they can somehow spin that as okay because you'll see them after the Elite Four. Well, who the fuck cares? I already beat the Elite Four. I ain't got nothing else going on. You know, why am I going to waste my time going after a legendary Pokemon after I already beat the goddamn Elite Four? So, there's only two situations for Pokemon. Either the single-player scene or the tournament scene. And if you're playing tournament, you got all kinds of other problems that I can't even begin to imagine. You know, there's all kinds of imbalances and things like that. So, I don't even know where to start there. But with the single-player option, you know, there are these things you could do. You could have it to where any Pokemon be available at any time. You could have it to where there isn't so much level grinding dependency. You could have it to where there isn't so much HM dependency. You could have it to where it's a diverse and fun game to play with a huge array of Pokemon with all kinds of different abilities and attacks and things like that. That's another thing. Why are some attacks even fucking attacks? Generation 3 and 4 has special abilities. Look at Mudsport. What does Mudsport do? It basically weakens electric attacks. Why the fuck is that an attack? Why am I going to waste a whole attack round doing that? Why can't that just be a power on a non-ground type, or even a ground type or something, and essentially just weaken all electric moves for the entirety of that combat? That makes sense. It's no worse than any of the other powers I've seen. So, why is that an attack? What, do Japanese people not think about this shit? They're supposed to be so fucking smart, and they don't think about any of this crap? What goes on in their culture where they can just, you know, take a heaping shit in their hand, stick it in some plastic, and call that a fucking game? That's Pokemon. And, you know, Japanese people are even worse than Americans. I didn't think that was possible, but yes, most Japanese games are even worse than the fucking Western games. Pokemon is nearly as bad as Fallout 3. Not quite as bad, but nearly as bad as Fallout 3. And that is the worst game I ever played. To tell you that Fallout 3 was so bad, I returned that shit to GameStop. I told them flat out, there is nothing wrong with this game other than it's not a game. And that's it. I didn't answer any more questions. I didn't, try to act like I was a sore loser or any of this other bullshit. There is just no reason for a game to be that bad. If you can take the time to fucking make a game, spend months on end constructing it, thinking up the plot line, thinking up the mechanics, programming that shit, then you can know better than to do that. If it takes you that long to fucking make a game, you fucking make it right or don't make it at all. There is no way you cannot know that these things are just completely flawed. I can understand that there are going to be trinkets in any game. There are going to be clunks, there are going to be glitches. You cannot avoid that. I'm not expecting perfection. But at the very least, I deserve mediocre. And Pokemon and Fallout 3 and shit weren't even that. They were not even mediocrity. Because mediocrity would mean I could at least see the game through and, get everything done and shit like that. Fallout 3 didn't even have that. And Pokemon is just so bad I don't want to see it through because it's just too fucking tedious. And that's my new Pokemon rant, because apparently the old one wasn't good enough because they already knew that it was impossible to catch Pokemon, that, trainers just come up to you and challenge you, come at me, bro, and other things like that, and you have no choice in any of the matters. And that alone was not enough to demotivate them to stop playing Pokemon. So, I guess that's it.